Hello and welcome to Midwest Writers Room. Our mission is to encourage, educate, and celebrate writers of the Midwest. I'm Luella Schmidt.
And I'm Ken Humphrey. Today's chapter break episode features Julie Jacob and her first novella, Bicentennial Eve, a Wisconsin novella, coming out May 19th, 2026 from Freshwater Press.
When Julie A. Jacob was a child, she decided she wanted to be a writer, and she's been writing ever since. Her professional career has focused on healthcare communications, but through the years, she has kept on writing creatively in her spare time. Her creative nonfiction essays have been published in Midwest Prairie Review, On Wisconsin, Open, Under the Sun, and several editions of the Tall Grass Writers Guild annual anthology. Bicentennial Eve is her first novel.
Great.
So, in
Thank
saying
you.
that, let's take a look at this. Bicentennial Eve is a gentle slice of life tale of a Wisconsin family gathering for the fireworks on the eve of Independence Day in 1976. As a cast of characters go about their day, each of them struggles with their own dilemma. From Grandma Kitty's quest for some adventure to young Skylar's search for a taste of first love, each member of the family is looking for a little independence of their own against the backdrop of a changing country.
Fantastic. Hello and welcome, Julie, to Midwest Writers Room. How are you doing today?
Hi, thank you. Thank you very much for having me on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. So, before we even talk about you or the book, 1976 Bicentennial, July 4th. I remember this distinctly. I
Me
was
too.
on my orange Sears 10 speed in a parade where you had to put the red, white, blue ribbons amongst your spokes. And it was just a bunch of us nitwit kids riding around trying not to run into each other. But there is still a picture my mom has where she called out my name as I was riding by. And dummy, I just stopped and got off the bike and looked. Instead of just keep on going by and waving, no, I stopped completely and then somebody ran into me from the back. All right, Julie. So, Bicentennial Eve. A lot of times we like to ask our authors kind of what their origin story is, but I think that comes clear through your bio, right? You kind of have writing in your blood, and you've always wanted to be a creative writer. So, in saying that, compound question here for you: when did you know this novella had to be written, and why were you interested in doing one set during the Bicentennial weekend?
That's a great question, Ken. Well, I was a young teenager when the bicentennial took place, and it just sort of was something that I always remembered. The special events, the big parade in Racine, all the bicentennial knickknacks and so forth, and the bicentennial minutes on the um, television. It just was such a special time. So it was something I already always remembered and thought about. And years ago, I wrote an article about how Wisconsin celebrated the bicentennial for Wisconsin Trails magazine. And this idea of doing something during the bicentennial just always sort of stuck with me. But it took me a long time before I had the nerve to actually start working on a novella.
Well, that's good. So when you did start working on it, what made you decide to set it on the night before, on the eve of the bicentennial, as opposed to the actual holiday itself?
That's a great question, and one that I've been asked before. Originally, I was going to write a story set on July 4th, 1976, about a family having this big wild party and the bicentennial bash. But after thinking about it, I realized that the story I wanted to tell was one that was better told the day before the 4th of July when members of the family were going about their daily lives and so forth. And so the story shifted from this wild story of a party and, drinking and carousing to just a gentle slice of life about a family on a typical day right before the 4th of July.
Okay, what a great decision. Just in the way you phrase it in terms of the context of what was going on. I mean, what a great decision, kind of the more contemplative approach to it. And I'm assuming that's what you really wanted to get out of the book was a lot of inner thoughts, this family, as opposed to the event itself. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. It's a very character-driven story with a lot of internal thoughts and monologues of the different characters.
Okay. So I'm going to riff for a second here. When I think about Fourth of July parades, we all grew up going to those and just watching all the trucks come down and the marching bands and all that. One of my favorite TV series of all time, The Wonder Years, had
Mhm.
the greatest series ending ever, which was set against, a Fourth of July parade and just all the images of, middle America, wherever it was set, of, horses and marching bands, and against that episode just really brought it home for me. I never had as cool a Fourth of July celebration as what the Wonder Years did, but to me, that just captures what a Fourth of July and specifically a bicentennial celebration should be.
I mean, you're not going to hear me arguing against the Wonder Years. I'm amen to that. So, then,
Mhm.
Julie, back to your book. My understanding is that you're alternating perspectives in various, throughout the book with different characters. And I'm wondering if you would talk a little bit about your decision to do that and how you felt that made it come alive.
Sure, that's another great question. Originally, I wanted to have the entire story told from the perspective of Skylar, who is the 13-year-old daughter in the family. But then I realized that I wanted to have scenes where she wasn't there and also get into the minds of the other characters. Looking back, having a book with the perspective of seven different characters over the course of one day probably wasn't the best decision for a debut novella when I'm new at all this, at writing a novel, but that's how it turned out. So there's seven main characters, and the perspective shifts from character to character throughout the book.
Can I follow up on that with a quick question
Sure.
before Luella gets into our next one? Did you set those all in third person POV? Were they all the same POV for each character?
It was all third person a POV for each character.
Very cool.
Seven is a lot to juggle. That's really impressive.
Well, I guess it was just, being naive, having never written a novel before. So my next one, I think I'm just going to have like one point of view.
I appreciate that. So, when you were ready to kind of publish this, what kind of path did you take?
Well, I actually didn't know if it ever would be published because, publishing is such a tough business to break into. So my plan was, if I couldn't find a publisher, to just go ahead and self-publish it like I did with a collection of essays several years ago. But 2 years ago, I was at the Wisconsin Writers Association conference, and I started talking to a woman, Tara Huck, and she invited me to join her writing group, which has been fantastic. And it turns out that Tara is also one of the founders of Freshwater Press, based in Two Rivers, Wisconsin, right by Manitowoc. And she said to me, I was reading parts of the book in our writing group, and she said, I encourage you to submit your manuscript for publication. And when she did that, then she dropped out of our writing group for a while, so there wouldn't be any conflict of interest between being in the writing group and being an editor. So I submitted my manuscript, and the Freshwater Press women liked it, and so it's being published. And I'm just thrilled. I when I got the email saying that they wanted to go ahead with my book, I just was like, yay!
Oh my gosh, I know I'm thrilled for you.
Thank
Congratulations. It
you.
really is
Thank you.
exciting, the first one, isn't it?
Oh,
And just a little promo for the show. We've actually got Tara coming on to the podcast later this year in October. She's going to be one of our guests.
oh,
Oh, late
fantastic.
in the
She's
year. Looking
great.
forward to that.
Yeah, you'll
Yeah, well,
you'll
you
love
really are.
talking to her.
So, any struggles or notable moments along the way as you were bringing this to life that you want to share with us?
Well, a lot of struggles because of this was my first novel, and I did a lot of false starts. I originally started this, several years ago, and I could never get beyond like page 5, and I just kept putting it away and coming back to it. And then finally, I did what I should have done all along and did a detailed outline of the plot and what was going to happen. And then that helped me move forward. The other challenge is, I would say, would be a lack of time, because I work full time and I teach and freelance. And like everyone else, I have different types of responsibilities. So it's carving out that time to write. But last year I made a, resolution that this is the year I'm going to get it done. And I would get up early in the morning and write for about an hour in the morning. And Finally got it done.
That's really incredible. I find that very inspiring, actually, that you have such a full life and you were able to fit it in, and I just love it. So good done. Well done. So here we are up to the time where we're going to ask you to do a reading. So whenever you're ready, go ahead and take it away and share with us before you start where in the book you're reading from.
Oh, thank you very much. This is what's on page 59, so it's about like a third of the way into the novella, maybe not quite that. And Claire, who's the mother, she is a member of a book and art club with a group of other middle-aged women, and they've decided to meet on July 3rd for their monthly meeting, even though it's the day before the 4th of July, because they feel it's still important to do that. So I'm just going to read about, like 4 or 5 minutes from this chapter where the where the women in the book club are meeting. And this takes place at noon on July 3rd. The Art and Book Club is meeting at Betty's house this month. Betty and Ed live in a white colonial with a screened-in porch opening to a patio with a view of Lake Michigan. Betty has said that the house is too large for them now that their son and oldest daughter are in college and their youngest will graduate from high school next year, but they love the location, and as Betty said, eventually there will be grandkids and will need the room. They're sitting in the screened-in porch, shielded from the sun and the mosquitoes, comfortably ensconced in oversized wicker chairs with cabbage rose chintz cushions. On a teakwood coffee table rests a purple vase that Alma created in her pottery class last week, along with an almost empty glass pitcher of screwdrivers and 3 glasses on a tray. They enjoy a screwdriver at every month's meeting, and this month, in honor of the holiday, Betty is using freshly squeezed orange juice and Ed's special Smirnoff vodka. Betty, Alma, and Claire decided to still meet this month, even though only 3 out of their group of 7 could still attend. Betty had said last week, "We need this time for ourselves, ladies. We can't let our little club fall apart because we feel guilty about taking time for ourselves. After all, we have our own identity as women that comes before being a wife or mother. My goodness, our mothers kept the country running during World War II, and then the men pushed them right back into the kitchen. We need to nurture our identity as women in our own right." Betty joined a women's consciousness raising group after Ed's, quote, little escapade, as she calls his affair, and since then her conversation has been peppered with phrases like pass the Equal Rights Amendment and consciousness raising. It feels daring to be doing this, Claire thinks, taking an hour out of their busy Saturday to discuss a book when they all have so much to do. Betty is hosting a family gathering tomorrow. Alma is a volunteer parade marshal, and Claire, of course, is entertaining her family for the fireworks tonight. It's like skinning dipping in the lake getting together like this, Alma had commented earlier. Working up the courage to do it is the hard part, but then it's so wonderful you wonder why you didn't do it before. Betty started this club 2 years ago. Before Ed's affair, Claire never would have dreamed that Betty, the most traditional of all of them, president of the PTA, Girl Scout leader, 3 children, a leader in the Republican Women, and proud of the Nixon-Agnew sign on her front lawn 4 years ago, would start a women's only book and art club. Yet Betty had said to her 2 summers ago, "Let's form an art and book club. Come to my house at 11 a.m. on Saturday." Betty has a way of saying things like she is giving orders, but it sounded intriguing, and so Claire accepted. They meet on the first Saturday of every month to discuss a book they have all read and share something they are working on creatively, whether it's Claire's watercolor painting, Alma's pottery, or Betty's poetry. Betty's husband called it the Old Hens Club, which Claire thinks is rude. Joe calls it her lady art thing, and in turn, Claire calls his golf league his guys golf thing. Before they begin their discussion of this month's book, The Bastard by John Jakes, the first novel in the American Bicentennial series about a family during the American Revolution and the years afterward, Claire tells them the story of Joe refusing to wash the casserole dish last Wednesday. "I asked him because I had to take Sky to the mall, but he said he's too tired," Claire says. "He said he drove so far to work 5 days a week, and he didn't have the energy to wash the dish. It was one dish that was soaking in the sink, and I asked him to wash and dry it. He said no, no." And Betty asks, "I said I knew he was tired, but I was tired too. Then I said I wasn't going to wash it, and I left for the mall. I was furious at him." Betty snorts. I've let the sit in the sink growing mold until he washed it. I know he has a long drive to work, but that doesn't excuse everything. It was so unlike him. He's usually so good about helping, Claire says, not wanting to sound like she's being disloyal to Joe. I'd consider the circumstances with the drive and all, Alma said. Cut him some slack. Alma's husband is a police officer and she is a guidance counselor. Claire has met Stuart a few times and he always says, be safe out there. She senses Stuart has a dim view of humanity, while Alma, on the other hand, is all about let's try to understand and view the situation from the other person's perspective. Claire sighs. I couldn't stand it, and I got up at 1 a.m. to wash it, and then Joe woke up and finished it, and I felt bad that he missed his sleep on a work night. He gets up at 5. No guilt. Betty wags her finger at her. No guilt. Betty, Claire thinks, would have terrified even General Patton.
I really enjoyed the slice of lifeness in this excerpt. And especially like I think a lot about the fact that, from a historical standpoint, like we know and have read and learned about like the women's liberation and that consciousness raising and things like that. We know of that, but then but there's something to be said for the fact that in the Midwest in particular, we sort of are a little bit later to those
Yeah,
trends. Like a lot of this happened in the 60s, but in the Midwest, we're feeling it in the 70s. Like we're always a tiny bit behind, the coast when
right.
whatever cultural change is happening. And I just thought it was such a reminder of where we were then, you know.
Yes,
And these
absolutely.
women talking about, what's going on in their lives and having various opinions on, what it should look like. That was totally normal.
And, for anybody listening to this, you need to flip over to the YouTube video version to watch Julie act out her characters, her air quotes, and her pointing, wagging her finger. That just
And your
added a little
sigh,
bit
the big
extra.
sigh. I like that. I love it. So
Yeah.
tell our listeners where they can find out more about you, where they can find your book.
Oh, absolutely. It will be published May 19th by Freshwater Press, and you can order it by going to freshwaterpressllc.com. And the Freshwater Press will also be at the Lakefly Writers Conference on May 2nd with a table. And I will be giving readings. Well, the launch party will be May 21st in Manitowoc at the Manitowoc Historical Society. I think it's like 1 to 4 or 2 to 4 um, in the afternoon. And then I will be giving two readings in Racine, one on Saturday, June 27th at Arnett and Son Bookstore in Racine, and then the other on July 11th at Vintage and Modern Books in Racine. So probably the best place to purchase it is to go right to freshwaterpressllc.com.
And do you have a website where you list all your appearances if people want to track you?
I have a website, juliajacobwriter.inc, and I have a link to the media kit, and then I'm going to update the list of readings and then repost that.
Perfect. And we'll throw that link down in the show notes as well,
Thank
so
you.
our readers can follow you if they so choose. All right, Julie, want to take now to thank you for coming on, introducing everybody out there to Bicentennial Eve, a Wisconsin novella. Thanks to everybody out there for hanging out with us in the Midwest Writers Room. I'm Ken Humphrey.
And I'm Luella Schmidt. Words ignite imaginations and spark change. Never underestimate the power of storytelling.
Midwest Writers Room is a production of the Wisconsin Writers Association. Writing and editing by Luella Schmidt and Ken Humphrey. Sound design and editing by Ken Humphrey. Music for the Midwest Writers Room was written by Michael Ramirez C. For more information, please visit wiwrite.org/podcast. Thank you.